On, on this video, I would like to continue a review and a new edition, we could say, of the Christological Hebrew Grammar, looking at the Abrahamic covenant of Genesis 12:1 and following. In Genesis 12:1 to 3, we have the promise of the Abrahamic covenant. The Lord promises to make Abraham a great nation, and in him to bless all nations. In Jesus Christ, the seed of Abraham, all nations are blessed. And that is when people place faith in him and his great work of redemption. So I'm reading chapter 12, verse 1 and following. We'll be looking at vocabulary, followed then by grammatical analysis, and then a translation and an application interpretation. So we begin moledet, which means kindred, a noun. We read, Vayomer Adonai el Avram, Lek lecha me'artzecha u'memolatecha u'mebeit avicha el ha'aretz asher arecha. So looking at the grammatical part of it and analyzing it, Vayomer Adonai el Avram, and the Lord said unto Avram. Vayomer is a cow imperfect, third masculine singular, from the verb amar. Notice the vav turns this over and puts it in the past as an imperfect. And we also have the o vowel here because historically there was a dissimilation when we have this pay olive type of verb. We have seen this in chapter 1. Yomer is repeated throughout, and so it means, and God said. The tetragrammaton is then followed by El Avram, unto Abraham. You have the preposition el, unto, in the noun Avram, Abraham. Note Av is the Hebrew for father. Ram means high or great. So the Lord said unto Avram, which meant high father or great father, Lek lecha me'artzecha, go, literally, for yourself, from your land. Notice lek is a cow imperative, second person singular, from the root halak. Notice the hey has dropped out in this imperatival form. The ha then, it follows, we have go, literally, for yourself. Le is the preposition followed by the personal pronoun second masculine singular in the cha. It is as though God is saying to Abraham, go for yourself from your land, me'artzecha. Notice in that phrase, me'artzecha, eretz is the noun for land. And in the min here, historically, the noon would not assimilate into the following olive. Since that is the case, we cannot double it. We have compensatory lengthening under the mem to show that the noon dropped out or elided. We go from a here to a tsere in compensatory lengthening. So go for yourself from your land. Notice the cha here again is a personal pronoun, second masculine singular. U memolatecha. Notice u is simply the conjunction and. Again, we have the mem, Since this is a labial, we have a shurik rather than a simple shabbat. Rather than ve, me, it changes to u, mim molataha. Notice the noon in the min, from, has assimilated into the mim by progressive assimilation, causing a doggish forte or a doubling. Then we have the noun moledet, meaning kindred. Here, when it is in construct, it becomes molat, and we add ha, being a personal pronoun, second masculine singular. So we end up with molat techa, from your kindred. Umebeit avicha, and from the house of your father. Notice the mem here, the labial. Uh, because of the mem, we have u, instead of them mem, you have u, and then this is followed, mebeit. Min, the noon of the min, has assimilated into the bait by progressive assimilation, causing a doggish forte. And from the house, from your house. Beit is a noun in construct with avicha. It is from the noun bayit, and in construct it becomes beit. And av means father. Umebeit avicha. And the ha again is the pronominal suffix second masculine singular. So go from your kindred and from the house of your father. El ha'aretz asher arecha, unto the land which I will cause you to see, or which I will show you. Notice el is simply your preposition, and eretz here is in pause. So we lengthen el ha'aretz. It's in pause. And notice as we look at this, the ha has the comments under it again in the definite article because the olive cannot take a doubling. Hence, normally, historically, it would have been ha'ol, ha'aretz, but the lamed dropped out because the olive could not double. So we have compensatory lengthening from a pathak to a comet. Asher is a relative pronoun which I will cause you to see. Notice the verb is ra'ah, a final lamed hey verb. It is a final, like we said, a verb with a hey, historically, is ra'ah, and that's why we call it a lamed hey verb. It is a hifil imperfect, first person singular from ra'ah. So we have ar echa. And notice the hey is dropped out, and we have an A-E vowel pattern, a pathak segol, which is indicative of a hifil imperfect, which I will cause you to see. Ha is your pronominal suffix, second masculine singular. So as we translate it, the Lord said unto Abram, go from your land and from your kindred and from the house of your father to a land that I will show you. So following the flood, the Lord, after indicating that he will dwell in the tents of Shem among the Semitic people, makes a great covenant with Abraham. After calling him out of Ur, he says these memorable words beginning in 12:1-3. And we've only covered one verse. We may call this the great Abrahamic promise that will lead into a covenant made in chapter 15 that will be unconditional. The exhortation to Abraham is to move to the land that God is going to cause him to see, away from his land, from his kindred, and from the house of his father, unto that land of Canaan that the Lord would show to Abraham. This is a call to a response of faith, and it is by faith that Abraham moves in obedience to the Lord. And as we move on, I'm going to stop there, but as we move on to verses 2 and 3, we'll come in verse 3 to the statement, in you all families of the earth will be blessed. And we'll see how this beautifully points to Christ as the one who is from the seed of Abraham, in whom all nations are blessed. I'll stop here. I'm holding it to short videos in this review and in this particular edition that we're doing.